And joining us is a gentleman who is no stranger to the Observer, very outspoken, and of course, as we draw closer and closer to the general elections, which is scheduled to take place later this year, he has his hands full. And I want to thank him for taking time out to linking with us here this evening. Let me say a special good evening to UNC Senator Wade Mark.
Yes, good evening, Mikee K, and good evening to your listeners and viewing audience.
Yes, indeed. It's always a pleasure to have you on. A lot is taking place. I know, of course, the UNC is still in the middle of the screening process as far as with candidates.
Yes, we know that at this time the party is seeking to wrap up that process by the end of February of 2025. And of course, we do not know when the Prime Minister will ring the bell. What we do know is that the Prime Minister has told Trinidad and Tobago in an unprecedented kind of activity that he intends to hand over the office of Prime Minister is a goat or cow to some chap known as Stuart Young, which is contrary to Section 76(1)(a) and 1(b). So we have all kinds of strange events occurring in our country, where for the first time we are going to be witnessing two individuals actually operating under two offices. One, Prime Minister, the other, political leader. That is a strange occurrence for Trinidad and Tobago, and it does hold serious implications. It does have serious repercussions for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago as we go forward.
Yeah, Senator, I agree with you. The fact of the matter is that we've always had elections. We've always had prime ministers putting themselves up, and dealing with the end result of it, of course. Why at this time, is this all about just preserving some legacy that, I have never been to the polls and have been beaten? Or is it just a matter of saying, listen, I've had enough and I want to walk away?
Look, the reality that we are faced with here, we do not know what is informing, shaping, or fashioning the thinking of the current Prime Minister. What we do know is that the current Prime Minister is seeking to impose a member of Parliament who has not led the PNM, who has not gone to the polls via a general election, who does not have a mandate, but he is being offered the job of Prime Minister by an outgoing Prime Minister. This is unprecedented. We have seen Prime Ministers in the past, some of them died in office, but we have never witnessed in our history since independence a current Prime Minister giving up office simultaneously to another individual. And you know what is even more strange? The individual who is giving up office is still the political leader, the undisputed political leader of the party that leads the majority in the House of Representatives. This is unprecedented territory that we are charting and traveling.
But Senator, a lot of these things that are occurring now didn't happen overnight. There were red flags. And I have to ask you, and I'm certain that many of the public that is looking on, how is this being done with such confidence and so bold? When you look at it and you start to connect the dots, I mean, we're talking about missing money. We're talking about Petrotrin. We're talking about so many things as you start to go along. I mean, this administration, if you take a step back and you look, has created more chaos, more instability, than actually serving and delivering to the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. They are agents of chaos, agents of disorganization, agents of disruption. Not that disruption is not a healthy thing. That is part of the tension of life. But when you are creating chaos and disruption simply to advance your own private, selfish, political agendas, I think there is where we begin to really delineate the difference between persons who are acting in the best interest of the national community and those who are acting in their own selfish interest. Now, whilst all of this confusion is taking place in the middle of a state of emergency, in the middle of what you have described as the madness at Petrotrin, which is now Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited, you have a sale or a lease of a very important asset that belongs to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, known as the Petrotrin Refinery. They call it the Cara Refining Company Limited. All this is happening at a time when Trinidad and Tobago is under severe financial, economic, and political stress. I make this point to demonstrate that the government has taken steps to dispose of an asset, and we don't understand, we don't appreciate, we don't have all the facts before us, and the reason for that is everything is opaque. There is a lack of transparency. There's a lack of accountability. We don't know, for example, what are the evaluation criteria, because they were never advertised. We don't know, as we speak, exactly where this process is going. And will the people of Trinidad and Tobago who own these assets, in particular the Petrotrin Refinery, we do not know what is in it for us. So all these things are swirling around us, and there's no way of the ordinary people knowing how this particular refinery is going to impact on their future.
And you're right. I mean, when you look at the news report, the Prime Minister says that the team appointed by the cabinet to evaluate the bids for the refinery is near completion of its work and is about to make a recommendation to the government. And the Prime Minister, of course, spoke about Pointe-a-Pierre MP David Lee, who he made an issue when in fact still we are left in the dark. We are citizens, something that belongs to us. We are left in the dark because there's simply no transparency in all that is taking place. The three companies whose proposals were evaluated was CRO Consortium, that's a locally based consortium, Inca Energy LLC, which is based in the USA, and of course the one that we're hearing that basically is going to get the nudge is Oando PLC, which is based in Nigeria. And according to reports, the executive director of Oando Energy Resources, Omafe Boyo, is in Trinidad as we speak.
Now, all of these things are happening without any, as I said, transparency. So what are we to make of this? The reality is that the Procurement Regulation Board is nowhere in sight. We know that the Minister of Finance was supposed to make regulations subject to affirmative resolution in our two houses of parliament to determine how do you go about disposing of state assets. But what the government has done, Mikee K, they have deliberately sidestepped the rules. They have deliberately sidestepped the Procurement Regulation Board and the regulator. So what the government has done is to go out there through a company called Scotia Capital, and I'll have more to say about that company in a short while. Scotia Capital is the sole financial advisor to the TPHL, and they have gone out there engaging in what is called, Mikee K, may I quote, unsolicited bids. Now that is a breach, a violation of the procurement laws of Trinidad and Tobago. And this is the third attempt at seeking to dispose of the assets of the refinery. The first two, we had carpetbaggers on the scene, and they couldn't go forward with the sale or lease or sale and lease of the assets belonging to the people. So they have now gone a third time, sidestepping procurement and shifting the criteria, that is the evaluation criteria, to suit their own whims and fancies. So what that is equivalent to, anytime you see a government or a state company owned by a government shifting the criteria to suit their whims and fancies, that is another expression for bid rigging. It is bid rigging that is taking place, or that has taken place in this particular scam dealing with the sale and or lease of our asset to a foreign company. Now, if it is that we are told, based on reports, that it was in fact given to Oando PLC of Nigeria, then obviously the government has to provide the country with answers. Now, Mikee K, you would know that there were 10 bidders, including energies and technologies company led by the OWTO, bidding for the refinery. It was boiled down to 3. But we don't know what the criteria were. And we are the owners of the asset. So the government has been engaging in secrecy and a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability. One of the things that they said back then, when they made the second attempt at trying to sell the refinery or to lease it, and even up to this third time, we were told that anyone who is successful in winning that bid to run our refinery must have had a track record, must have had experience in the refining business.
That's right.
Mikee K, would you believe that Oando is in exploration and production? they are in trading and marketing, they are in infrastructure and development, they are in corporate management. But nowhere is Orlando engaged or has any experience in refining.
And that's the thing about it, Senator.
So the question here, the government, if what we are being told is true, that they have handed our asset, which is the Petrotrin refinery, to Orlando, which has no experience, no track record whatsoever in refining, then the government of Trinidad and Tobago, led by Stuart Young. Now, I told you earlier, we have to talk about Scotia Capital.
Yes.
Scotia Capital and Scotia Bank in Trinidad and Tobago are like peas, the same peas in the same pod. It's like the peas in the same pod. So you have this company hired by TPHL. We asked a question and we were told that they are paid $55,000 a month for their services to TPHL. You know that company? Does that company explain to Trinidad and Tobago that Stuart Young's father, Richard Young, I'm not accusing him of any impropriety. I am saying, however, it is a bit coincidental that he was a former managing director of Scotia Bank, Trinidad and Tobago Limited. His son is the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
And soon to be Prime
And
Minister.
I have just seen, it was in last year article out of the United States, where this company called Scotia Capital, that was responsible for going out there and signing Orlando and signing Crow Consortium and signing Inca Energy LLC. That company was fined by the Securities and Exchange Commission of the United States $7.5 million. You know for what, Mikee K?
Tell me.
They were fined because they were found guilty of widespread record-keeping failure. They were fined because they were using WhatsApp instead of putting everything in writing. This is the same company having been charged in 2023 by the Securities and Exchange Commission. The government of Trinidad and Tobago, TPHL, found it necessary and acceptable to employ not once, not twice, but 3 times. They were there in 21, they were there in 22, 23, and they were there in 23, 24, and now we are in 25. And every time they come to our shores, they are given a contract where they get between 50 and 60,000 US dollars per month. Now, this company, Scotia Capital, would have handpicked these companies, 10 companies, then shortlisted 3, and then they bring a fellow from the United Kingdom, a former High Commissioner, to do what is called an evaluation. But you and I and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago don't have a clue because they never advertise the list of criteria. We have to pull teeth to find those 12 evaluation criteria to determine, for instance, what they use to actually determine whether X company or Y company will be successful. That is corruption. That is bid rigging. And how can Scotia Capital be associated with this whole process when you have a procurement legislative regime in place and the government has refused to pass regulations to deal with the sale and disposal of our asset? Then I am not going to be concerned about Oando. I am concerned about the government that is engaged in a wholesale sellout of the nation's assets for song and a dance. I recently heard that one of the agreements they want to arrive at, Mikee K, I don't know. The government has to tell us is that the Oando crew out of Nigeria is saying if we have to buy this refinery, you have to pay, you have to inherit all the debts of this company called Karakara Refining Company Limited. And the question you also have to ask, Mikee K, is whether Oando will be taking charge of Paria, because Paria cannot be separated from the refinery.
That's right.
As you know, Petrotrin is an integrated petroleum
that's
and
right.
gas company.
No, I want to make sure.
No, we don't know.
Let me do a perception check here, Senator, so people could understand what you say. Are you saying that the government will have to absorb the liabilities?
We understand, and we call on Stuart Young and the Prime Minister who's outgoing to tell Trinidad and Tobago if one of the deals that they arrived at with Oando, if Oando happens to be the successful bidder, is to take charge of all of the debts of not only the refinery, but all of the debts of Petrotrin. They don't want no part of the debt.
But Senator, I'll tell you what I'm surprised at this point in time, at this stage. And I think the viewers will agree with me. We are surprised if we wake up one morning, even in the midst of a SOE, and hear that no one was murdered. No, we'd be surprised. We will be surprised if there's a deal that this administration is going to enter to that is going to be above board and is going to benefit the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Every deal that is mentioned, everything is something under the table, some backroom deal. I mean, it certainly doesn't make sense. You're telling me to absorb the liabilities, also compounded with the fact that Oando is not going to hire any of our local professionals to work on this venture. None whatsoever. So what are we getting into? How is it that this government can be so bold and so confident to get into something that is not directly benefiting the people of Trinidad and Tobago? Time is running out, Senator.
Yeah, and that is the critical point. The government is selling out our assets, and they are keeping it a secret. Even it is that 2 weeks ago, the cabinet agreed that Oando would be the successful bidder. What explains to you and me and to the people of TNT that the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries and the Prime Minister have not made a public announcement as to the successful bidder? Is the government waiting until they call the general elections, or when the general election is about to be called, to make such an announcement, to try to mama-guy the people, to try to fool the people? Are they waiting until they dissolve the parliament and there's no system of accountability through questions that will be put to them, through motions that will be raised in the parliament, and they will get away scot-free? Is that the purpose? Because right now there's no transparency.
None.
Everything is in secret. Everything is opaque. That is what is taking place. And it is our monies that are jumping up in a band.
Yeah, and to add insult to injury, to add insult to injury,
right?
yeah, to add insult to injury, you have a man who simply believes that he can ride off into the sunset because, hey, I am no longer the prime minister. I decided I had to go. But all of these deals have to be tied up. And the announcement for these deals, of course, is going to be made, as you said, conveniently. This is the same prime minister who had a problem with the African bank, saying that the workers in that bank must be paid tax-free. But he had no problem bending backward for the Stewart family when it come to sandals, when it came to tax concessions and waivers and all of that. Now with Oando getting them a sweet deal. All of these sweet deals seem to benefit a selected few, but never the citizens of this country.
No, Mikey K, you must never forget as you talk about that issue, about these sweetheart deals. Never forget that in a finance bill of April of 2016, the Minister of Finance, Colin Burt, introduced legislation through the Finance Act that allowed anyone who were in the business of constructing family dwelling units in Trinidad and Tobago, they will escape and they will be exempted from paying any kind, any forms, any type of taxes. Since then, you had a fellow called Alan Warner building 46 private apartments in a place called in Tobago. 46. The Prime Minister have one, his daughter has one, the governor of the central bank has one, and others, other members of the high-ranking PNM family, they have both. But you know what? This Alan Stewart, this Warner rather, has not, he would have benefited from that particular arrangement.
That's right.
Where he can sell any apartment for $1.8 million and not pay a cent tax to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It happened also with the Minister of Finance, who built Alora Heights in Newtown, Port of Spain. He too would have escaped paying any taxes. So while they are seeking to impose property tax on us, new electricity rates on us, new water rates on us, the cost of living going to the rooftop, they have escaped paying any taxes to the people through this particular scheme that they invented in 2016, and surprisingly, it ends in 2025.
Senator, I want to thank you so much for taking time. We have a lot to cover, but time does not permit us. But really and truly, you have to ask yourself, I mean, these crooks are so bold. I mean, so bold when you look at all that is taking place. That's right, you had a finance minister going into parliament to make sure and fix his business and the business of his friends. And it's true what the honorable opposition leader has said. It is all about the rich, taking care of the rich. That's all. That's all. And the middle class has been wiped out.
I would just simply say in closing, the PNM under Rowley and Stewart and that criminal gang have now transformed the PNM into a government of the rich, by the rich, and for the rich.
Thank you so much, Senator. It's been a pleasure. Of course, I will invite you back because there are other things that we need to cover. Thank you so much again. Best of luck to you and your entire team, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Mikey K. Thank you.